My husband slapped me and pulled my hair while I was pregnant in my last month.
Hello everyone. Enjoy these relaxing moments while you watch.
Maria sat in the small kitchen, her hand gently stroking her growing pregnant belly. The front door burst open with such force that the hinges screeched. Xavier stepped inside, his breath reeking of alcohol. "Maria," he shouted, his voice brimming with unrestrained anger. "Where are you?" Startled, Maria stood up, but her feet felt glued to the floor. Xavier stormed over, his eyes blazing like fire. "My boss just scolded me. Do you know why? It's because of women like you. Good for nothing but sitting around and being a burden." "Xavier, I didn't." Maria began weakly, but Xavier immediately cut her off. "Shut up. I don't want to hear your pathetic excuses. You can't even do anything right. Do you think you're fit to be a mother?" he snarled, grabbing a nearby chair and slamming it onto the floor. Maria trembled and stepped back, feeling each of Xavier's words stabbing into her mind. She wanted to scream, to fight back, but fear clamped around her throat. As Xavier continued his tirade, Maria's thoughts drifted to the first time they met. Xavier had been charming, always knowing how to make her laugh. He had promised her a happy life. But that man no longer existed. In his place was an angry, controlling Xavier. "Are you listening to me, Maria?" Xavier yelled, his voice echoing throughout the house. Maria took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Xavier, I'm pregnant. Can you please try to relax?" Her words only fueled his rage. Xavier charged at her, gripping her wrist tightly. "Pregnant? You think that's an excuse to be lazy?" he shouted, slapping her hard. Maria staggered, instinctively placing her hand over her belly to protect the baby. "Don't hurt the baby," Maria pleaded as tears streamed down her face, but Xavier didn't stop. He continued shouting and grabbed her hair, forcing her into a chair. In the corner of the house, Anna, the elderly neighbor, heard the commotion. She was all too familiar with the couple's fights. Anna had once tried to reason with Xavier but was met with harsh insults. Now, she could only stand by, quietly praying for Maria. "Maria!" Xavier roared again. "You're driving me insane. Why did I ever marry you?" Maria said nothing, silently crying. Eventually, Xavier stormed out, slamming the door behind him, leaving Maria alone in the chaotic house. Anna tiptoed to the window, peering through the curtains. She saw Maria clutching her pregnant belly, trembling in the chair. She wanted to rush over to help but hesitated, her fear of Xavier holding her back. "She has to get out of there," Anna whispered to herself. Maria sat still, her mind swirling with thoughts. She remembered her family, her once close friends. Xavier had successfully cut her off from the outside world. He wouldn't even let her keep her own phone. Whenever she tried to call someone, his threats silenced her. A cold breeze seeped through the window, carrying the sounds of the night. Maria glanced outside, spotting Anna's faint silhouette and the dim glow of the streetlight. She thought to herself, "Where can I go? No money, no friends, no family." Her baby's image flashed in her mind, sparking a glimmer of hope. "I can't let my child grow up in this. I have to find a way out," she resolved. But the fear of Xavier loomed like a heavy shackle, restraining her every thought of escape. He wasn't just her husband, he was like a prison warden, controlling her every move. Yet Maria knew that if she did nothing, she wouldn't only lose herself but would also subject her child to endless suffering. She looked up at the wall in front of her, where their wedding photo hung. In the picture, Xavier smiled, his arm wrapped tightly around her. That image now seemed like a bitter reminder of promises never fulfilled. Maria remained motionless on the cold floor, her trembling hand shielding her cheek after Xavier's brutal slap. The dull ache spread across her face, but it was nothing compared to the pain in her heart. Xavier's cruel words echoed in her mind, each one cutting like a sharp knife. Do you think you're fit to be a mother? Someone as useless as you is nothing but a burden to me. Those words haunted Maria. She glanced around the house, once their warm haven, now a prison. The overturned chair, the shattered lamp, and broken shards scattered everywhere painted a picture of despair. The eerie silence was broken only by the ticking of the wall clock, a cruel reminder that time marched on while she remained trapped. Maria cradled her belly, letting out a soft sigh. The baby stirred inside her, as if sensing her unease. "I'm sorry, my love. I'm sorry I let things get this way," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. Maria flinched, her heart racing. She feared Xavier had returned in another fit of rage. But the knock was gentle, unhurried. "Maria, it's me, Anna," a soft voice called from outside. Maria hesitated, then slowly dragged herself to the door. She peeked through the crack and saw Anna standing there, holding an old woolen scarf. The concern etched on Anna's face was clear. "Are you okay, dear?" Anna asked softly, her eyes meeting Maria's swollen, tear-streaked ones. Maria bit her lip and shook her head. She didn't dare open the door, afraid that Xavier would find out and punish her even more. "I'm fine, thank you," Maria said quietly, her voice shaky. Anna sighed. "Maria, don't hide it. I heard the noise. If you need help, come to my door. I'll always be here." Maria choked back a sob and nodded faintly. But as Anna walked away, Maria locked the door tightly again, her heart heavy. She knew Anna wanted to help, but Xavier would never allow anyone to interfere in their lives. That night, Maria curled up in a corner of the room, trying to lull herself to sleep. But every little sound startled her, the fear of Xavier's return weighing heavily on her. Memories of the past filled her mind, replaying the moments when Xavier had begun to change. She remembered the first time he lost his temper, just a small outburst over a meal that wasn't to his liking. Then came the harsh words, the first slap, and the suffocating control. One by one, her friends drifted away, not because they had changed but because Xavier wouldn't allow it. He checked her phone, read every message, and deleted every contact. Once, Maria received a call from Lucia, her best friend from college. But when Xavier saw Lucia's name, he snatched the phone and hurled it to the ground. "You don't need friends. You only need me," he roared, his eyes wild. From that moment, Maria no longer dared to keep in touch with anyone. Her family grew distant as well. Xavier disliked her visiting them, always using her pregnancy as an excuse for her to stay home. Maria became more and more isolated, with no one to confide in. One day, she had tried to resist. She suggested working remotely, earning a little income so she wouldn't have to depend entirely on Xavier. But he only scoffed. "You think anyone needs your pocket change? I make the money, you just sit there and have the baby. Stop dreaming." Xavier growled, then locked her computer. Maria remembered the helplessness she felt that day. She had nothing left, no job, no friends, no one on her side. Only Xavier remained, with his unending fits of rage. Tears rolled down her cheeks again as Maria leaned her head against the wall. A sharp pain shot through her belly. "No. I can't break down now," she told herself. The next morning, Maria was startled awake by the sound of the door slamming open. Xavier had returned, his face cold and expressionless. Without sparing her a glance, he tossed his jacket onto a chair and headed straight to the bedroom. Maria spoke softly, her voice trembling. "Xavier, could we talk?" Xavier stopped abruptly and turned around. "Talk? About what? I'm tired. Don't bother me." His disdainful gaze pierced her before he slammed the bedroom door shut. Maria sighed. Once again, she had been brushed aside. She was no longer a wife but merely a shadow in this house. When Xavier fell into a deep sleep, Maria quietly opened a drawer and retrieved an old phone hidden beneath layers of clothes. The phone had no SIM card and could only connect to Wi-Fi. She hesitated for a long time before turning it on, scrolling through her old contacts. She stopped at Laura's name, her closest friend from college. Maria's fingers trembled as they hovered over the screen, but then she pulled her hand back. If Xavier finds out, he'll never forgive me. Yet the image of her unborn child came to mind, giving her a momentary surge of courage. She whispered, as if reassuring herself, I'm not just thinking about myself, but for my child too. Biting her lip, she stared intently at the phone screen. But in the end, she simply turned it off and hid it back in its place. Her fear of Xavier loomed like an invisible wall, blocking any action she dared to take. Outside, dark clouds gathered, signaling an impending storm. Maria hugged her belly tightly, feeling the baby's gentle movements. Despite her exhaustion and pain, a small voice inside her whispered, I have to do something, before it's too late. As night fell, the gray skies mirrored Maria's heavy heart. The house was cloaked in silence, broken only by the ticking clock and the howling wind outside. Maria sat curled up in the corner of the living room, her arms wrapped protectively around her belly. The cold wind seeped through the window, making her shiver. Suddenly, a loud noise came from the bedroom. The door swung open, and Xavier stumbled out, his eyes bloodshot and a beer can in hand. He staggered toward Maria, his cold gaze fixed on her. What are you sitting there for? Xavier snarled, throwing the empty beer can to the floor with a deafening clang. The house is a mess. How do you expect me to live like this? Maria tried to stay calm, responding gently, I'm so tired, Xavier. I don't feel well. Xavier laughed bitterly, his voice dripping with mockery. Not well. All you do is sit around, and you're tired. What kind of weak woman are you? He stepped closer, his eyes full of menace. Or are you trying to blame me? Maria shook her head, instinctively backing away. No, I didn't mean that. I just need a little rest. Xavier suddenly raised his hand but stopped midway. He clenched his fist tightly, glaring at Maria. You'd better not push me. Then he turned and walked into the kitchen, rummaging noisily through drawers. The sound of clattering dishes filled the house. Maria remained frozen, her heart pounding as each second stretched endlessly. She thought about the early days of their relationship. Back then, Xavier had been gentle, caring, and always made her laugh. But over time, he changed. What began as harsh words escalated to suffocating control and uncontrollable fits of rage. Maria had once believed she could change him, that love could heal all wounds. But now, all she had left was fear. Suddenly, the phone rang. Xavier immediately turned, his sharp gaze fixed on her. Who's calling you at this hour? Maria stammered, I don't know. Maybe it's the wrong number. Xavier stormed over, snatching the phone from her hand. He stared at the screen, where an unknown number was displayed. Without hesitation, he ended the call and threw the phone to the floor with a loud crash. No one is allowed to call you except me. Understand? He growled. Maria stared at the shattered phone in shock, feeling the suffocating grip of isolation tightening around her. Xavier turned and left, but not without a final cold remark. I'm going out. When I get back, this house better not look like this. The door slammed shut. Maria sank to the floor, her tears falling silently. She had no phone, no way to contact anyone. She was completely cut off. From the house across the street, Anna peered through the curtains, her eyes filled with worry. She had heard the shouting, the crashing of objects. She wanted to help, but Xavier was unpredictable. All Anna could do was silently pray for Maria. Maria sat in a daze, her mind replaying memories of the past. She remembered the first time Xavier had controlled her. It was when she wanted to attend a gathering with friends. But Xavier refused, claiming she needed to rest. Slowly but surely, he severed her connections with everyone. I just want what's best for you. Staying home with me is enough, Xavier had said, his tone gentle but laced with domination. Maria had once believed that. But now, she realized she had been imprisoned by her marriage. Outside, the rain began to fall, the rhythmic patter blending with the wind, deepening the gloomy atmosphere. Maria stared into the darkness beyond the window, her heart empty. A soft tap on the window startled her. Maria turned to see Anna, gently tapping on the glass. Maria, are you okay? Anna asked softly, her voice full of concern. Maria hesitated, then nodded weakly. But Anna wasn't convinced. She pulled a small piece of paper from her pocket and slid it through the window crack. If you need help, write to me. Don't endure this alone. Maria took the paper, a small warmth blooming in her heart. But her fear of Xavier still paralyzed her. She managed a faint, weak smile as a gesture of gratitude. Anna sighed and quietly returned to her house. Maria watched her leave, then looked down at the paper. The brief message was simple yet full of kindness, I'm always here to help you. Maria held the note close to her chest. In the cold, dark night, a tiny spark of hope flickered. But the shadow of Xavier's dominance still loomed, preventing her from acting. She gently caressed her belly and whispered, I'll find a way. I just need a little more time. Outside, the rain intensified. Yet deep in Maria's heart, a small seed of hope had begun to sprout. Maria curled up on the sofa, her blank gaze fixed on the empty space before her. The house was eerily silent, broken only by the sound of rain tapping softly against the window. In her hand, she clutched the small note from Anna, but Maria hadn't dared to write anything on it. The fear of Xavier was like an invisible rope tightening around her. The front door suddenly swung open. Xavier returned, his footsteps heavy, his breath reeking of alcohol. His eyes were glassy yet still held that familiar spark of anger. You're still sitting there? Xavier glared at Maria, his voice hoarse. Maria tightened her grip on the note, trying to keep her voice steady. I was about to go rest for a bit. Xavier let out a sharp, derisive laugh as he stepped closer. Rest? You've rested enough. The house is filthy, there's no dinner ready. I come home exhausted, and this is what I have to see. Maria trembled as she stood, her voice soft. I'll clean up right away. Xavier suddenly grabbed a pillow from the sofa and threw it forcefully onto the floor. All you do is talk. You're driving me insane. Maria stepped back, bumping into the edge of the table. Her hand instinctively went to her belly. The baby stirred lightly inside her, making her even more anxious. She had to protect her child, no matter what happened to her. Xavier moved closer, leaning down to glare directly into Maria's eyes. Do you think I'll go easy on you because you're pregnant? Don't fool yourself. Maria tried to hold back her tears, stammering, Please, don't hurt me, don't hurt our baby. Xavier burst into loud, mocking laughter before suddenly grabbing Maria's arm and dragging her into the kitchen. He opened a cabinet, pulled out a porcelain plate, and held it up. What have you ever done for me, huh? Sitting around enjoying life? Maria screamed, No, Xavier, please. She struggled, trying to free herself from his tight grip. Across the street, Anna, the elderly neighbor, jolted up at the sound of Maria's scream. She rushed to her window but saw nothing but darkness outside. Clenching her fists, her heart filled with worry. Inside the house, Xavier smashed the plate onto the floor, shattering it into pieces. The loud crash echoed sharply, making Maria tremble violently. Look at this. It's all your fault. Xavier shouted, his breath ragged. Maria collapsed onto the floor, tears streaming down her face. She felt utterly helpless, unable to escape Xavier's wrath. After a few moments of glaring at her, Xavier scoffed and turned to leave. "I'm going out. When I come back, this place better be clean. Got it?" The door slammed shut again. Maria remained frozen, staring at the broken shards on the floor, which seemed to mirror the fragments of her spirit. She knew she couldn't keep living like this, but how could she escape? Maria wiped her tears and slowly stood. She looked around the house, its chaotic state reflecting her inner turmoil. She walked to the window and glanced toward Anna's house. The faint yellow light glowed from a small window. She thought of the note in her hand, Anna's words still clear, "I'm always here to help you." A small glimmer of light flickered in Maria's mind. She couldn't remain silent anymore. She had to find a way to escape Xavier, not just for herself but for her unborn child. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. Maria jumped, her heart pounding. She moved closer, listening carefully. "Maria?" "It's me, Anna," came a soft voice. Maria hesitated before slightly opening the door. Anna stood there, holding a woolen scarf. She gave a gentle smile, her eyes filled with concern. "I heard something break. Are you all right?" Anna asked softly. Maria shook her head, tears welling up again. I don't know what to do." Anna sighed and placed a comforting hand on Maria's shoulder. "You can't keep living like this. I know of a women's shelter. They can help you." Maria's eyes widened, her expression wavering. She had never considered seeking help before. Xavier had always threatened to make things worse if she told anyone. I'm scared Xavier will find out," Maria whispered. Anna gently squeezed her shoulder. "I understand. But you can't wait any longer. If you need, I can help you contact them." Maria bit her lip, torn between fear and hope. Yet looking into Anna's sincere eyes, she felt a faint sense of safety. "I'll think about it," Maria murmured weakly. Anna nodded. "I won't push you. But remember, my door is always open." Maria watched Anna's figure disappear into the night, her emotions swirling. She knew she couldn't delay forever. If she didn't act soon, there might be no chance to save herself and her child. She turned back to the messy house, the shattered pieces on the floor a stark reminder that silence would only make things worse. She needed to be strong, to find a way out. Clutching Anna's note tightly, Maria's eyes began to show a glimmer of determination. "For my child. I'll try." That night, Maria barely slept. Her mind was a tangled mess of conflicting thoughts. She feared Xavier discovering any of her plans, but at the same time, she knew that remaining silent would only endanger herself and her baby. The sound of the front door slamming open startled Maria. Xavier stumbled in, reeking of strong alcohol. His movements were unsteady, but his eyes still burned with fury. "What are you doing just sitting there? Is the house cleaned yet?" Xavier barked, his glare cutting through her. Maria quickly stood, trying to keep her composure. I'll do it right away." Xavier stepped closer, his voice low and menacing. "Right away? Do you think just saying that is enough?" Before Maria could react, he grabbed a towel from the table and threw it at her. "Do it. Don't make me say it again." Maria trembled as she bent down to pick up the towel, her tears threatening to spill over. She quickly turned her face away, afraid Xavier would see her crying. She endured it silently, just hoping he would leave her alone. Xavier stood there for a moment before stomping into the bedroom and slamming the door. Maria let out a shaky breath of relief, though her heart continued to race. She knew this wasn't the end. Xavier would never stop. She thought of Anna's words from the night before about the women's shelter. A small spark of hope flickered within her. But how could she reach out for help when Xavier controlled everything? Maria's eyes stopped at the shattered phone on the floor. She bent down to pick up the pieces, hoping to piece it back together. But it was no use. The phone was completely broken. She turned her gaze to the note Anna had given her, her fingers clutching it tightly. "I'm always here to help you." Taking a deep breath, Maria knew she couldn't let fear hold her back any longer. She had to act, even if it was just a small step. The sound of Xavier's footsteps coming from the bedroom made Maria freeze. He opened the door, his expression heavy with fatigue. "I'm going to bed. Don't bother me." Maria nodded slightly, her heart pounding. As soon as Xavier closed the door, she hurried to the kitchen table, grabbed a small piece of paper, and a pencil. "Anna, I need help. Please help me get out of here." After writing the note, Maria folded it tightly and hid it in her hand. She quietly moved to the window, glancing toward Anna's house. The lights were off, but she knew Anna always left her window slightly open at night. Maria's hands trembled as she opened her window a crack and slipped the note through, letting it fall onto Anna's doorstep. She quickly closed the window and stepped back inside, trying to calm her breathing. But deep down, she remained terrified that Xavier might find out. The next morning, weak sunlight filtered through the window. Maria woke to the sound of movement outside. She tiptoed to the window and carefully peeked through the curtain. Anna was outside, bending down to pick something up. Maria held her breath, watching. Anna unfolded the note, quickly scanned it, and then looked up at Maria's house. Determination was evident in her eyes. Anna swiftly turned and went back inside her home. Maria let out a shaky breath, a flicker of hope igniting in her heart. But at the same time, the fear of Xavier's reaction loomed over her. If he found out, the consequences would be dire. Xavier's voice called from the bedroom, startling Maria. "Maria! Bring me breakfast." Maria quickly replied, "Yes, I'll make it now." She stepped into the kitchen, her hands trembling as she prepared breakfast. Her mind raced with questions. What would Anna do? Would someone come to help her? What if Xavier found out? A knock on the door startled her, causing her to drop the spoon she was holding. Xavier emerged from the bedroom, his brows furrowed. "Who's knocking at this hour?" he barked. Maria stammered, I don't know." Xavier strode to the door and yanked it open. Anna stood there, holding a basket of fruit. "Hello, Xavier," Anna said with a polite smile. "I brought some fresh fruit for Maria. Pregnant women should eat plenty of fruit, it's good for their health." Xavier scoffed, looking Anna up and down. "We don't need anything from you." Anna remained calm. "I just want to help. Since I live nearby, let me know if you ever need anything." Xavier didn't respond. He simply slammed the door in her face. Turning to Maria, his eyes were filled with suspicion. "What does that old woman want here?" Maria struggled to stay calm. "She just brought some fruit. That's all." Xavier stared at her for a long moment before retreating to the bedroom and slamming the door behind him. Maria stood frozen in the living room. She turned to look at the fruit basket on the table. Hidden beneath the fruit was a small note. Maria carefully pulled it out and opened it. The message read, "I'll contact the women's shelter. Be ready. Don't be afraid, I'll help you." Tears streamed down Maria's face as she clutched the note tightly. For the first time in months, she didn't feel completely alone. Maria pressed the note to her chest, her heart pounding. Anna's words gave her a glimmer of courage in the stifling darkness of this house. "I'll help you. Be ready." She took a deep breath, her hand gently resting on her belly. The baby moved slightly as if lending her strength. Maria whispered, "I won't let you suffer anymore. I promise." But then a loud noise came from the bedroom, and Maria froze. The door swung open, and Xavier stepped out, his face filled with anger, his eyes cold and piercing. "That old hag came here again, didn't she?" Xavier growled, his voice icy. Maria quickly slipped the note into her pocket, trying to keep her composure. No. She just brought some fruit. That's all. Xavier stepped closer, his eyes narrowing. Do you think I'm stupid? She's always hanging around. What's she up to? He suddenly grabbed Maria's arm, squeezing it tightly, sending pain shooting through her. Tell me. What are you and that old woman hiding from me? Nothing. I swear there's nothing. Maria cried, tears streaming down her face. Xavier roared in anger and shoved Maria to the floor. She clutched her belly, trying to protect the baby. Sharp pain radiated through her abdomen, leaving her breathless. Seeing Maria holding her stomach, Xavier hesitated for a moment, his expression flickering with confusion. But then he turned away, scoffing. You'd better not let me catch you playing games. I won't forgive you. He retreated to the bedroom and slammed the door shut, leaving Maria trembling on the floor. She felt the dull ache in her belly and panicked, her hands pressing protectively against it. Please, don't let anything happen, please, she whispered. The baby moved slightly, reassuring Maria that it was still okay. She let out a shaky breath, tears streaming down her face. She couldn't delay any longer. Once Xavier was sound asleep, Maria quietly got up and went to the kitchen. She opened a drawer, rummaging through it until she found an old key. It was the back door key Xavier had forgotten about. Maria gripped it tightly, a flicker of hope stirring within her. But she stopped. If Xavier discovered she had left, he would lose his mind. If she were caught, he would never forgive her. She glanced at Anna's note again. I'll help you. Maria knew she couldn't act rashly. She needed a plan. But time was running out. The next morning, Maria was startled awake by the sound of the doorbell ringing. Her heart raced as she sat up. Xavier stormed out of the bedroom, his face a mix of irritation and suspicion. Who's at the door this early? He grumbled, heading to open it. Standing at the door was a middle-aged man dressed neatly. He smiled politely. Hello, I'm Louis from the electric company. We're here for a scheduled line inspection. Xavier squinted at the man, his expression filled with suspicion. I don't recall scheduling anything. Louis maintained his smile and presented an ID badge. It's just a routine check, no appointment needed. If we don't inspect, there's a risk of electrical fires. Xavier hesitated before reluctantly stepping aside. Make it quick. I don't have time for this. Louis nodded and entered the house, but his eyes briefly flicked toward Maria with a meaningful look. Maria noticed it, and a glimmer of hope stirred within her. Louis moved through the living room, pretending to inspect an outlet. When Xavier turned his back, Louis discreetly slipped a small piece of paper under the flower vase on the table, where Maria could easily see it. Maria cast a cautious glance at Xavier, then let her gaze linger on the paper. She understood this was her opportunity. Louis worked for a few more minutes before bidding goodbye. All done. Thank you for your cooperation. Xavier snorted and slammed the door shut. What a nuisance. As soon as Xavier returned to the bedroom, Maria quickly retrieved the paper and unfolded it. Inside, there was a brief message. Pack your belongings. Tonight, Anna will help you leave. Maria clutched the paper tightly, tears streaming down her face. Finally, a way out. But she would have to be extremely careful. Night fell, and the air was thick with silence. Xavier had drunk himself into a stupor and was fast asleep. Maria quietly entered the kitchen, retrieved a small bag, and packed a few clothes and essential documents. With trembling hands, she picked up the back door key. Step by step, she moved toward the door, carefully opening it without making a sound. Outside, the faint light from Anna's house glimmered. A shadow moved, Anna was waiting. Taking a deep breath, Maria stepped out and quietly shut the door behind her. She ran toward Anna, tears streaming uncontrollably down her cheeks. Anna pulled her into a tight embrace, whispering, "Quickly, my dear. We must go now." Maria nodded, feeling a sense of safety she hadn't felt in months. The two hurried away from the house and toward a car parked nearby. Louis was waiting inside and gestured for them to get in quickly. Maria glanced back at the dark house one last time. She whispered, "Goodbye, Xavier." The car pulled away, leaving behind the suffocating darkness that had enveloped her for so long. Maria sat curled up in the back seat of the car, her hands protectively cradling her pregnant belly. The cold night wind seeped through the cracked window, making her shiver, but it wasn't as chilling as the lingering fear in her heart. Beside her, Anna gently held her hand, her gaze comforting. "You're safe now, Maria. No one can hurt you anymore," Anna said softly. Louis, the middle-aged man driving the car, nodded through the rearview mirror. "We're heading to a women's shelter. They'll help you rebuild your life." Maria nodded slightly, her voice trembling. "Thank you. I don't know what I would have done without you both." Anna squeezed her hand tightly. "You're not alone. Never forget that." The car sped through the dark night, leaving behind the haunting shadows of the house. Maria stared out the window as the darkness receded. For the first time in months, she felt a sense of relief. But deep inside, she couldn't shake the lingering fear. Xavier wouldn't let this go. The next morning, Maria woke up in a small but cozy room. Morning sunlight streamed through the curtains, bringing a gentle warmth. The room was simply furnished, with a steaming cup of tea and a few slices of bread on the table. A soft knock came at the door. "Maria, are you awake?" Anna's voice called from outside. Maria slowly sat up. "Yes, I'm awake." The door opened, and Anna entered with another woman Maria didn't recognize. The woman was in her 40s, dressed simply, with a kind and gentle demeanor. "Maria, this is Laura. She's a lawyer and the director of this shelter," Anna said, introducing her. Laura stepped forward, smiling warmly. "Hello, Maria. You're safe here, and we'll help you every step of the way to rebuild your life." Maria hesitated but nodded. I don't know where to start." Laura sat beside her, speaking gently. "First, you need to rest. But after that, we'll work together to file for divorce and request a restraining order against Xavier." Maria's eyes widened. "But, if he finds out, he'll hurt me." Laura placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, her expression firm. "Xavier can't hurt you anymore. We'll notify the police, and the law will protect you. But you need to trust yourself and trust us." Maria nodded slowly, her emotions swirling. Fear still lingered, but for the first time, hope began to flicker. A few days later, Maria sat in a small meeting room at the shelter, facing Laura and a police officer named Miguel. Miguel was a stern-looking man, but his eyes held compassion. "Maria, we've gathered some information about Xavier," Miguel began. "He has a past record of violent behavior from his youth, though the charges were expunged. However, with the details you've provided, we will initiate an investigation." Laura added, "We've also prepared the divorce papers and a restraining order application. All you need to do is sign." Maria stared at the documents in front of her, her hands trembling. Signing them would change everything. But what if Xavier found her? Anna gently held Maria's hand. "You can't go back, Maria. You have to be strong, for yourself and your baby." Taking a deep breath, Maria picked up the pen and signed the papers. A single tear rolled down her cheek, falling onto the page. Miguel nodded. "We'll file these immediately. If Xavier tries to approach you, he will be arrested." Maria clenched her fists. "I've taken the first step." That afternoon, at Xavier's house, the sound of loud knocks echoed through the door. Xavier opened it, frowning as he saw two police officers standing before him. What's this about? Miguel stepped forward from behind them, his expression stern. Mr. Xavier, we are here to inform you that you are prohibited from contacting Maria and her unborn child. This is a court order. Xavier froze, then let out a derisive laugh. She dared to file charges against me. You think this piece of paper can stop me? Miguel replied coldly, if you violate this order, you will be arrested immediately. Xavier clenched his fists tightly but said nothing. His eyes burned with anger, but he understood there was nothing he could do at that moment. Miguel held Xavier's gaze. We'll be monitoring. Don't test the law. The door slammed shut. Xavier stood motionless, his breaths heavy. Anger boiled inside him. Maria, you'll regret this. At the shelter, Maria felt a sense of relief upon hearing that Xavier had received the restraining order. Yet, she couldn't shake the lingering unease. Laura approached her, her voice gentle. Maria, you need to rest. Xavier can't hurt you anymore. Maria nodded, her expression softening. She placed her hand on her belly and whispered, I'll protect you. From a distance, Anna watched Maria and smiled. She knew the journey ahead would still be long, but Maria had taken her first step toward freedom. The morning sun streamed through the windows of the cozy room at the women's shelter, bathing it in warmth. Maria woke up after a peaceful night's sleep, something she hadn't experienced in months. She gently placed her hand on her belly, feeling the baby's faint movements. A soft knock came at the door. Maria, are you awake? Laura's kind voice came from outside. I'm awake, Maria replied, her voice still tinged with sleep. The door opened, and Laura entered with a warm smile. Today we're going to court to finalize the divorce and the restraining order. Are you ready? Maria hesitated briefly but then nodded. I'm ready. Laura placed a reassuring hand on Maria's shoulder. He won't be able to hurt you anymore. We've prepared everything. All you have to do is believe in yourself. The courthouse was an imposing building with grand architecture. Maria sat in the waiting room, her nerves on edge. Laura sat beside her, holding a stack of documents. Don't worry. Everything will be fine. Xavier can't win this, Laura reassured her. The door to the courtroom opened. Xavier entered, his face etched with anger. Beside him was a male lawyer with a cold expression. Xavier's sharp gaze landed on Maria, as if trying to pierce through her. Maria lowered her head to avoid his stare, but Laura whispered gently, Don't be afraid. Hold your head high. You've done nothing wrong. The hearing began. Laura's lawyer presented a clear case detailing Xavier's abusive behavior toward Maria, supported by evidence the shelter had helped collect. Xavier's lawyer tried to refute the claims, accusing Maria of fabricating stories to gain custody of the child. However, the arguments were weak against the undeniable evidence. The judge, a stern middle-aged man, delivered his verdict in a firm voice. Based on the evidence presented, I approve Maria's petition for divorce and issue a restraining order against Mr. Xavier. If you violate this order, you will be prosecuted. Xavier shot up, slamming his hands on the table. What? You can't do this to me. The judge's expression hardened. Mr. Xavier, maintain order in the courtroom. This is my final decision. Xavier's lawyer tried to pull him back down, but Xavier glared at Maria, his teeth clenched in fury. You'll regret this. Maria clenched her fists, but this time, she didn't lower her head. She looked Xavier in the eye, her gaze steady and fearless. You no longer have the power to hurt me or my child. Xavier froze, as if unable to believe what he'd just heard. Maria was no longer the weak woman he once controlled. After the hearing, Maria and Laura stepped out of the courthouse. The bright sunlight seemed to herald a new beginning. Laura smiled softly. You did great. He no longer has control over you. Maria took a deep breath. I feel relieved. But I'm still worried. Xavier isn't the type to give up easily. Laura nodded. That's true. But with the restraining order in place, if he acts recklessly, the police will intervene immediately. You're not alone. A car pulled up in front of them. Anna stepped out, her kind smile lighting up her face. Maria, I'm so proud of you, Anna said as she approached and wrapped Maria in a warm embrace. You're safe now. Maria hugged Anna tightly, tears streaming down her face, not from fear, but from relief. Let's go home. You need to rest, Anna said gently. A few weeks later, Maria had settled into a small apartment arranged by the women's shelter. It wasn't large, but it was well equipped and, most importantly, it felt safe. One morning, as Maria prepared tea, her phone rang. She glanced at the screen and saw Laura's number. Hello, Maria. I wanted to inform you that Xavier was summoned by the police for violating the restraining order, Laura said. Maria froze. What did he do? He tried to approach you at the shelter but was caught. The police issued him a stern warning. If he does it again, he'll be arrested. Maria let out a heavy sigh. I knew he wouldn't let this go easily. Laura reassured her, but now he's under strict supervision. Focus on your health and preparing to welcome your baby. Maria smiled softly. I will. Thank you, Laura. One weekend afternoon, Maria sat on the sofa, her eyes gazing out the window. Anna entered, carrying a bouquet of pale lavender flowers. These will help you relax, Anna said with a warm smile. Maria accepted the bouquet, inhaling deeply. Thank you. I feel more at peace than ever. Anna sat down beside her, her gaze filled with kindness. Your life will get better. You've been strong enough to overcome it all. Maria gently stroked her pregnant belly, her eyes reflecting hope. I'll do my best, for my child. That evening, Maria sat down to write in her journal for the first time in months. Today, I felt the light after so many dark days. I'm no longer afraid. Xavier no longer has control over me. I will live strongly, not just for myself but for the baby I'm about to welcome into the world. Matthew, I promise to give you a beautiful life. On a peaceful morning, soft sunlight streamed into Maria's small apartment, filling the space with warmth that contrasted with the darkness she once endured. Maria stood by the window, gently stroking her belly. The baby shifted slightly, as if reminding her that the day of his arrival was near. The sudden ring of the doorbell made Maria pause. Her heart raced for a moment, but she quickly calmed herself. It's okay. Everything is fine now. Maria opened the door to see Laura standing there, her gentle smile present as always. Beside her was Miguel, the police officer, in uniform. Hello, Maria. We have some important news for you, Laura said. Miguel nodded. Xavier has been arrested. Maria froze. He's been arrested. Miguel explained calmly, yesterday, Xavier attempted to approach you again. This time, not only did he violate the restraining order, but he also threatened staff members at the shelter. The police intervened immediately and arrested him. The court has decided to detain Xavier temporarily while further investigations into domestic violence are conducted. Maria exhaled, her shoulders relaxing as if a massive weight had been lifted. Finally, it's finally over. Laura smiled and placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. You don't have to be afraid anymore. He will face justice for everything he's done. Miguel added, with the evidence we've collected, Xavier is likely to face prison time. We will ensure he cannot harm you again. Maria nodded softly, tears streaming down her face. But this time, they were tears of relief and freedom. A few weeks later, Maria stood in her small room, her gaze tenderly resting on the crib beside her bed. Inside, her son Matthew slept peacefully. Maria leaned down, gently stroking his soft hair. "My little one, we've made it through everything," she whispered. Anna entered, carrying a tray with warm soup. "Maria, have some food. You need your strength to care for Matthew." Maria smiled as she took the tray. "Thank you, Anna. I wouldn't have made it to today without you and everyone's help." Anna sat beside her, her eyes kind and gentle. "You've been so brave. Now you deserve to be happy." Maria nodded slightly, her eyes glowing with newfound confidence. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she was no longer alone. One afternoon, Maria sat in a small cafe near the shelter with Laura and Anna. The atmosphere was calm and serene. Maria held Matthew in her arms, the baby sleeping peacefully. Laura set her coffee down and looked at Maria with admiration. "You've been so strong, Maria. Not everyone has the courage to stand up like you did." Maria smiled faintly. "I don't think I could have done it without all of you. I'm truly grateful." Anna smiled, brushing Maria's hair gently. "Sometimes, just a small spark of hope is enough to help someone overcome any challenge." Laura leaned forward, her expression serious. "Xavier has been sentenced to 3 years in prison. It's not a long time, but it's enough for him to reflect on his actions." Maria was quiet for a moment. "I don't care how long he's in prison. What matters is that Matthew and I are safe. I want to start over." Laura nodded. "And we'll always be here for you." Months later, Maria stood in front of a new apartment, not a temporary shelter, but a real home for her and Matthew. The women's shelter had helped her secure a part-time job at a small bookstore, allowing her to care for Matthew while earning a steady income. Carrying Matthew in her arms, Maria stepped inside the apartment, her eyes shining with happiness. "This will be our home, my little one." Anna stood behind her, beaming. "This home feels so warm. You deserve this." Maria turned and hugged Anna tightly. "I don't know how to thank you enough." Anna patted her back gently. "All I want is for you and Matthew to be happy." One morning, Maria walked into the bookstore where she worked. The owner, Felipe, a cheerful middle-aged man, greeted her warmly. "Good morning, Maria. How's Matthew?" Felipe asked. Maria smiled brightly. "He's doing great. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to work here." Felipe waved her gratitude off. "You're hardworking, and this store needs people like you. If you ever need help, just let me know." Maria thanked him and began organizing the shelves. The peaceful atmosphere made her feel truly alive, no longer just surviving in fear. That evening, Maria sat on the balcony of her apartment, holding Matthew in her arms. The soft glow of the moon bathed them in light. Maria hummed a lullaby, her voice tender and soothing. "The storms have passed, my love. We'll always be together. I promise to protect you and give you the best life I can." Matthew stirred gently in his sleep, as if sensing the immense love of his mother. Maria looked up at the sky, a soft smile gracing her lips. "Thank you, life, for giving me the chance to start over." Somewhere far away, Xavier was now just a faint memory, no longer a shadow over Maria's life. She had conquered her fear, reclaimed her happiness, and created a new beginning for herself and her son. Maria's story offers a profound lesson about courage and inner strength. Faced with abuse and control, Maria refused to give up and instead fought to protect herself and her child. She shows that even in the face of fear, people can overcome if they find help and believe in themselves. Her journey emphasizes the importance of speaking out against injustice and affirms that everyone deserves to live in safety, love, and happiness.
If you enjoyed this story, we invite you to give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to keep bringing heartwarming stories almost every day. We are very grateful for your support. See you soon.